O mundo se tornou mais populoso e o nosso padrão de vida tornou-se imensamente melhor. Mais pessoas produzem mais ideias, o que leva a mais invenções. Para que esse efeito da superabundância possa acontecer, as pessoas precisam ser livres para pensar, criar, discordar e agir. Precisam estar em um ambiente em que estejam seguras para trabalhar, pesquisar, investir e lucrar. Ou seja, precisam estar em um mundo livre.
On November 15th last year, the world's population reached 8 billion people. So, according to one estimate, global population will peak at about 9.7 billion people in about 2064, and then decline to 8.8 billion people by 2100. To keep population constant, the world has to have, on average, 2.1 children per woman per lifetime. Now, the world's population continues to expand because we still have higher than replacement level rate birth rates in sub-Saharan Africa. But in 70% of countries around the world, the fertility rate is already below the replacement level. You can see Brazil over there. Your total fertility rate is about 1.7, 1.8 children per female, and of course the replacement level is over here at 2.1. So you're not doing well, but you're certainly doing much better than South Korea, where the number of babies per woman per lifetime is lower than 1. How many times have you heard an older person say, "When I was a young man or a woman, things were much cheaper"? Well, that is true, but the wages were also much lower. And in normal times, wages grow at a faster pace than prices. The point is that we are becoming more productive, and consequently, we are getting better paid. So time prices are calculated by dividing the nominal price of a good or a service, that's the one that you see in a shop, by the hourly income at the time of the purchase. That's time price. Whereas money prices are measured in dollars and cents, time prices are measured in hours and minutes. Time price simply tells you how long you have to work in order to earn enough money to buy something. We believe that the time price is the true price because while we buy things with money, we pay for them with time. Time that we could be spending doing other things, such as playing sports or spending time with our loved ones. So using time prices makes sense for a variety of reasons. First of all, time prices capture both changes in prices but also in wages. They do not rely on government GDP deflators and other contentious measures of inflation like the CPI. They do not have to be adjusted for purchasing power parity between countries. Time prices are the same globally in the United States and in Brazil. An hour of work is the same here as it is in the United States. And of course, they are true across time so that you can compare prices. How many minutes of work did somebody have to work in order to buy a loaf of bread in Brazil in 1980 versus 2022, or in 1820 and 2022. And time prices are measured in time, which is an independent variable that's not influenced by external factors such as human perception or the environment. Time is universal and constant for general purposes, and of course time is equal for everyone because everyone only has 24 hours in a day. So what happened to resource prices during the age of globalization between 1980 and 2018? What we found by looking at 50 different types of resources we found that on average, the time price decreased by almost 72%, which means that instead of 1 unit in the basket of commodities, you can now get 3.52. You have 2.5 more than you had back in 1980. Pork internationally declined in price by almost 85%, which means that you can get 6.5 pounds of pork for the price of 1 back in 1980. And some people ask, is this pace of progress fast enough? Peter Thiel, for example, says that we are not growing at a fast pace. But what I would argue, that in this period of globalization, where we have seen time prices fall by 72% and our abundance increase by 250%, that this was the fastest growth in resource abundance, fastest growth in prosperity ever measured on Earth. For thousands of years, we've been on the planet for about 300,000 years. For thousands of years, your living standard would be equal to those of your parents and your grandparents, and your children and your grandchildren. Standard of living was completely static. In the last 38 years, we have seen abundance of resources increase by almost, well, 250% or 3.25. So my point is that we are living in an increasingly abundant world. But the reality is that resources are growing at a much faster rate than population. And the difference between these two rates, that's new knowledge. Knowledge produced in the human mind. The process of knowledge creation starts with the overall population. Data suggests that only a small fraction of humanity invents or innovates anything. So the bigger the population you have, the more likely there are going to be people in it who are going to invent or innovate anything. So as you can see, knowledge that we can still come up with in this world is potentially unlimited. There have simply not been enough time and enough people since we showed up 300,000 years ago to but scratch the surface of potential knowledge that can still be discovered. So let me conclude by drawing on the following analogy. If we are correct, the world is a closed system. Oh, there we go. So we have it. So what are the threats to superabundance? Well, the first one is a decline in population. You open a newspaper, you switch on television, you are being told that having a child is an act of selfishness because children produce a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere. You are told that the future is going to be horrible. And obviously, if we are not going to have people in the world, if the population is going to decline, then there are going to be fewer ideas. Our economic growth is going to suffer as a result. Another problem is a decline in political freedom. Throughout advanced nations, we have huge problems with freedom of speech. Why is freedom of speech important? Freedom of speech is important on both micro and macro level. On a micro level, it allows two people to communicate, to come up with new ideas, new inventions. I must be free to communicate with Alan or Ivan, to change ideas freely, to publish them, to invest in the marketplace, and then to profit from it. So freedom is very important, and it's also important on a macro level. If our governments prohibit free speech, we cannot tell them that the world, that the country is going in the wrong direction. Why did communism survive in Eastern Europe for so long? Because they didn't have freedom of speech. They couldn't say, no, we are going the wrong direction. So we have to have both growing number of people, and also we have to maintain our political freedom. And of course, we cannot allow for the continuation and decline of economic freedom. Markets work because they separate bad ideas from good ideas. Markets are an incredibly important part of the knowledge creation process because they separate from valuable ideas and valueless ideas. And if the government comes in and puts its finger on the scale and says that you should invest in that area or that area, well, then that messes up the entire process of new knowledge creation. Knowledge creation today in the world is limited to 6 or 7 countries, all of them very free. The rest of the world basically uses the knowledge produced in free countries. But if freedom declines throughout the world, then that is a problem. So anyway, I want to conclude by drawing the following analogy. If we are correct, the writers of superabundance, then the world is a closed system with finite number of atoms in the same way that a piano is a closed system. The piano has 88 keys, but those keys can be played in an infinite variety of ways. And the same is true of the planet. The Earth's atoms may be fixed, but the possible combinations and recombinations of those atoms are infinite. So what matters is not the physical limits of our planet, but human freedom to experiment and reimagine the use of the resources that we have. Thank you very much.